Great, welcome everyone. I am just going to introduce Ian Noakes, and Ian is on our OFA staff. He's the Energy, Waste, Resource, and Transportation Policy Analyst for OFA. Welcome, Ian.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you, everyone, for attending this Lunch and Learn. As Joanne said, I'm a research policy analyst at the Ontario Federation of Agriculture. One of my main files is energy, how the cost and availability and reliability and sustainability of energy for our farm businesses. And today we have a very interesting topic, especially in I guess, Southwest Ontario. But we have with us today Nicole Michalchuk. She is the Senior Policy Advisor in the Strategic Petroleum Initiative section of the Ministry of Natural Resources. And welcome, Nicole, and I look forward to the presentation.
Great. Thanks, Ian, Joanne. So good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to thank you for joining us. So as mentioned, I'm Nicole Michalchuk with the Ministry of Natural Resources. I'd first like to thank the Ontario Federation of Agriculture for having us during this Lunch and Learn to discuss old and inactive oil and gas wells in southwestern Ontario. It's been a really great experience working with OFA to make this afternoon possible. So today, I'd like to share some information with you around old and inactive gas and oil wells, including the petroleum industry in Ontario, the ministry's role in oil and gas, how to identify a well, public and environmental safety, responsibilities of landowners and provincial supports, the Abandoned Works Program, the ministry's Legacy Oil and Gas Wells Action Plan, and then we'll follow a question and comment section at the end. So following the short presentation, I will be able to take your questions, and I and my colleagues on the line will do our best to answer them. You're also more than welcome to call or email us after the session if you have further comments and questions, and I'll share some contact information shortly. So diving right into the history of the petroleum industry to give you a sense as to where old and inactive gas and oil wells on the landscape came from. So oil was originally discovered in 1858 in Lambton County and led to the rapid development of thousands of oil wells throughout the area. So production of both gas and oil continued south along an extensive zone north of Lake Erie and to the east of the Niagara Peninsula. Currently, the ministry has records for over 27,000 known wells. However, there are potentially more unknown wells on the landscape that we don't have records for. So wells can be either active or inactive. There are more than 3,400 active wells, both gas and oil in Ontario. Active wells are wells that are currently in operation and produce oil, gas, or salt. However, most gas and oil wells on the landscape are considered inactive. They're old wells, sometimes referred to as legacy wells, and I'm sure some of you may have heard that term before. So these aging wells were drilled and decommissioned decades ago when plugging practices might not have been well developed and record keeping was extremely limited. So this is before more effective management regulations were put in place. So we would like to have a quick poll to get us started, to get an understanding of people's awareness around oil and gas wells. So our question is, how aware are you of the presence of oil and gas wells in your community? So are you aware, not aware, or unsure? And you can go ahead and participate in the poll that you see there. So seeing that most people are aware, some were not aware, and some are unsure. Great, so 70% of you said that you were aware, and it's possible that some of you might actually have some oil and gas wells on your property. So thank you for participating. So most of the province's gas and oil wells are located in southwestern Ontario. The map shows how the majority of the wells are inactive old wells, and that's shown in gray. The majority of these wells do not have a license holder, licensee, or other viable operator, which means responsibility for the well falls to the landowner. And the black dots that you see are the approximately 3,400 active wells that are on the landscape. So what is the Ministry of Natural Resources role, and why are we here talking to you today? So the ministry oversees Ontario's petroleum industry and old well infrastructure by providing expert advice to the province, municipalities, Indigenous communities, and industry, regulating the exploration and production of oil and natural gas under the Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Act, including through issuing licenses, permits, and approvals for wells, and developing and enforcing standards and policies to ensure that gas and oil wells are developed and decommissioned safely according to Ontario's guidelines. We also administer the Abandoned Works program that funds the plugging of old oil and gas wells that pose a threat to public and environmental safety. To date, over 450 wells have been plugged under this program. And also working collaboratively with our municipal partners to provide support related to gas and oil well emergency planning, preparedness, and as well as response. So we have some mention of Emergency Management Ontario, who supports municipal response and coordinates provincial activities. The Ministry of Natural Resources leads the response to petroleum emergencies on Crown land and also provides technical advice to provincial ministries and municipalities. And in addition, the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation, and Parks leads the response to any impacts to air, soil, and water quality. So identifying a well. So how do you know if there's a well on your property? So there are actually multiple ways that you can go about this. So if you're not sure if you have a petroleum well on your property, you can do a simple search online to find out if there's a well record on or near your property. So you want to visit ontario.ca/gas and oil wells and search the petroleum well map. So once you see the map of the petroleum wells, you can further search a specific address or area to find any well record in the provincial database. And it's important to note that even though a well record may not exist, there could still be an undocumented well on your property. So following this session, we are going to be providing the Ontario Federation of Agriculture with a PDF version of a postcard here that's going to help you search online using the petroleum well map. So that'll become available to you later. We can also take some time during the question and answer period to go through how to actually operate that provincial database, and we can use an example and pull up a well record. So you can also search for a well record or receive more detailed records about a well that you know exists through the Ontario Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Library. So the library is a not-for-profit resource center for members of the public, as well as researchers and industry, which operates separately from the ministry. Landowners can access information from the library about wells on their property anonymously if they wish. And a link to this library can be found on our website at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. Another way to check is to physically search your property. So old inactive wells have sometimes been buried, they might be below the surface. So when doing a search on your property, you can look for debris piles, old foundations, old tanks, partially buried pipes, maybe some stone, brick, wood, or clay tiles that might be piled up. Also look for pipes used for well casings, and that might indicate that a well might be nearby. Look for covers that might conceal a well, or look for areas of dead or discolored vegetation or slumpage of the soil. That might be an indication that there are leaking liquids or gases that are coming to the surface. So if you suspect that there may be a petroleum well, it is recommended that you stay a safe distance from it due to any hazard that might be present if you weren't aware that it was there before. And then please contact the ministry and we can help assist you. There may be multiple old wells on a single property. Long established neighbors or local community members are really valuable sources of information, as well as you can look for historic aerial photos if that's available, and which maybe might be accessible through your municipal office or maybe a local library. So if you're unsure whether a well exists on your property, is an old petroleum well, or maybe you're not sure if it's a water well, you can give us a call at 519-873-6999. 4634, or email us at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca. So public safety and the protection of Ontario's communities remain the government's #1 priority. Some old gas and oil wells may pose a public safety and environmental risks if the well wasn't properly plugged and decommissioned, or if it was left unplugged. So many earlier gas and oil wells also may have had inferior or improper linings or casings. So aging wells can potentially cause spills to the environment, may also provide a pathway for poisonous gases such as hydrogen sulfide to reach the surface. And hydrogen sulfide is an extremely hazardous gas. It can have that rotten egg smell and can cause possible life-threatening injuries if inhaled. So compromised wells can provide a way for other explosives or dangerous gases such as methane to reach the surface. So it's important to note that water wells can also act as a pathway for gases from underground, making their way up to the surface. So these gases, along with other fluids, can migrate below ground and can affect groundwater quality, impact nearby vegetation, soil, and surface water. So signs of a leaking well. So what you can look for is whether there's black soil staining, damage, or discoloration of vegetation. As you can see in this picture here, the ground is depressed or sinking, the presence of gas bubbles if there's pooling water nearby, or that rotten egg smell like we discussed, which may potentially be caused by hydrogen sulfide. So if you identify a leaking well, you should contact the Ministry of Natural Resources and also report it to the Spills Action Center. And Spills Action Center contact is 1-866-663-8477 or 1-866-MOE-TIPS. Contact information is also available on our website at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. If you suspect hydrogen sulfide, avoid low-lying areas or confined spaces where toxic gases could accumulate. If there's an immediate concern for public health and safety, you and all individuals on your property should evacuate the area and contact 911. Also, keep in mind, if you're making changes to your property, you'll want to check if there is a well nearby. So you can use the petroleum well map. The link is available on our webpage at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. The reasoning for this is that when excavating or beginning construction, you'll want to make sure that you don't hamper the ability to access the well in the future. So you don't want to be able to constrain it in case work needs to be done on it. So when excavating or beginning, watch for signs of a well. And if you do see signs of a well, stop working and just give us a call, and maybe we can help you out with the particular issues relating to your well. If you aren't sure if there's a well or need help using the petroleum well map, also happy to help in that instance. So please contact us at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca or call us at 519-873-4634. So landowners with an old well on their property are responsible for plugging it if an active operator cannot be identified. So current Ontario standards and policies ensure that gas and oil wells are developed and decommissioned safely according to guidelines. The Abandoned Works program is also available to landowners to cover the costs associated with gas and oil well plugging if a well is hazardous to the public or the environment and the eligibility requirements are met. If you have questions regarding your well or well plugging, we encourage you to contact us again at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca or give us a call at 519-873-4634, and the ministry will work with you to develop a plan for your well. So we will break in the presentation just to have another quick poll. So we want to know, were you aware the province could provide financial assistance to plug wells that pose a heightened risk to public and environmental safety? So were you aware, were you unaware, or are you unsure? And so if you could just participate in the screen that's popped up, that'd be great. So we're seeing majority of people are aware. That's great. So thank you for your participation in that. So I want to get a little bit deeper into the abandoned works program. So any oil or gas well may qualify for the abandoned works program if both of the following apply. So that's an active operator cannot be identified for the well other than the landowner, and you have not used, benefited from, or intentionally tampered with the well. So if you want to have a well on your property considered for the program, you can email us at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca with some pertinent information such as your contact information, the well location and license number, if you're able to find that on the provincial well database, a description of the wellhead or casing visible, if there's any leaking fluid or gases, and if you can provide photos, that's really helpful. So the ministry will determine if your well qualifies for the program. And if your well qualifies, we'll have an inspector visit the site and do an assessment of the well and rank your well based on the risk to public safety and the environment. So wells that we rank as immediate or significant hazards are addressed first. So we then arrange and pay for a pre-qualified well contractor to plug the well on behalf of the landowner. At the earliest opportunity, keeping in mind that other wells eligible under the abandoned works program may be prioritized first. So access to the land where the well is situated will need to be granted by the landowner. And in some cases, we may require consent from adjoining property owners as well. So more information about the abandoned works program can be found at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. And lastly, we're going to talk about the ministry's implementing of the Legacy Oil and Gas Wells Action Plan. So this action plan has significant investments being made to identify and mitigate risks associated with old oil and gas wells. So the action plan includes undertaking research and scientific studies, expanding eligibility and funding for the abandoned works program, funding to assist municipalities prepare for emergencies associated with legacy gas and oil wells, and engaging stakeholders and residents in southwestern Ontario, where wells are particularly prevalent, to raise awareness of the presence of wells and receive input on the ministry's action plan. So if you want to provide further input on this action plan, you can ask during the following question and answer portion, or contact the ministry at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca. Or give us a call at 519-873-4634. And to get more information on gas and oil wells, to find contact information, or to get links to other websites we mentioned this afternoon, please visit ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. So now we'll move to our question and comment period. So to help me answer, I do have colleagues on the line from the ministry. Catherine, a senior program advisor, Karen, a petroleum specialist, Annie, the manager of strategic petroleum and initiative section, Robert, compliance supervisor, Emmeline, petroleum inspector, and Mohammed, an engineer. If there are any questions that we can't answer here, we'll be happy to answer your question or address your comment if you contact the ministry. And just before we begin, I want to remind everybody that we're in a public forum here. And the protection of privacy is important. So be cognizant of sharing personal information in the chat. And if your question is site specific, we might ask that you reach out to the ministry separately so we can look into your situation.
Thank you, Nicole. I do understand you mentioned that you're going to possibly go through and show us how that map works. Is that correct?
Yeah, we can certainly do that now.
Okay. Well, I'm going to actually ask a couple of questions and see if it motivates anyone in the audience to ask some questions as well. Where I live, they did some testing, I think about 80 years ago, to see if there was natural gas in the area. How would I know if I find, such a well hole, if it's been properly plugged or if it is plugged at all?
Make sure I didn't take myself off mute here. Here we go. Yeah, so in terms of whether to know if and when a well might have been plugged. So you'll be able to find plugging information for an oil or gas well on your property by doing that simple search that we talked about. So searching online the petroleum well map. So the link is on our website, ontario.ca/gas and oil wells. So once you see the map of the petroleum wells, you can do a further search by just inputting your specific address or area, and you'll be able to pull up a well record if it's there in the database. So in addition, you can access the library like we talked about. So the oil, gas, and salt resources library, that's a really great resource that allows landowners to view really detailed records of oil and gas wells that might be on their property. So the link to that also on our website at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells, as well as some contact information for the library is available there. If you do discover a well on your property that's not in the database or you're not sure and you have questions, please contact the ministry. So again, our email is gasandoilwells@ontario.ca.
So a follow-up on that then is, I gather this program looks at gas and oil wells. There's, I may not know if it was an old water well, I guess. So what wells do you cover, and how would I go about finding out what type of well I do discover then?
Yeah, so the Ministry of Natural Resources has oil and gas wells in their online provincial database. There are also the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks has their own separate map to identify the location of water well records. So if you find something in your yard, on your property, in your farm field, and you're not really sure what it is, you can certainly check out our database at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells to see if it's a gas or oil well, or you can check out the Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks to see maybe if that infrastructure you're finding might actually be an old water well.
I have another question then. So what are the dangers or other concerns if I do think I found like an oil, gas, an abandoned well? Is it just the gas leaking, or I mean, should I be really worried?
So short answer, no, not all wells pose a safety risk at all. So aging wells and oil wells, they can become like an increasing risk to safety and the environment as the infrastructure of the well starts to deteriorate over time. However, properly plugged wells will reduce the risk to landowners and the environment. So landowners who are aware of and discover a well on their property, again, this is why we encourage you to contact the ministry. And if you identify issues, we might be able to provide assistance to help address the issues, like, for example, through the Abandoned Works program. But if you do come across an old well and you've seen those indications that it might be leaking, so we talked about, the discoloration of vegetation, if the ground might be sinking, maybe there's bubbles in standing water, call the ministry and call the Spills Action Center. And their information is available on our webpage at ontario.ca/gas and oil wells.
There's a question in the
Oh,
chat
great.
quickly, and there's a few more. I haven't scrolled all the way down there, but if there's an abandoned gas well that has been plugged, can the top of the remaining casing be removed? Can a building be built over or near an abandoned well?
Good question. Yeah. So I would say that, we mentioned before about not constraining a well just in case like future work needs to be done. Keeping in mind that, as the well over time gets older and older, maybe future work might need to be done, future maintenance might need to be done. I am going to perhaps put this over to my colleague, perhaps Karen Gray or Mohammed, who might be able to speak to, what the top of the wellhead should look like after it's been properly plugged.
Sure. So typically after it's been plugged, part of the abandonment involves putting welding a steel cap on top. Well, first cutting it about 1.5 meters below grade, and then putting this welding a steel cap on top and then burying it. So chances are if it's been properly abandoned, then you won't see it. But if there's still casing, if the casing's there and there's a steel cap on it, then you can identify it with a metal detector.
So can
If,
you build over it then? That was the second part of that question. Over or near?
This is Mohammed Mukim from the ministry. Generally, I mean, it is not recommended all over the world not to build anything on top of an existing, abandoned, petroleum well. The reason being that any well, no matter 100 years old or 200 years, it might deteriorate with time and start leaking gas, and it might, invade the basement of the house or any structure built on top of it. So it is not recommended to build anything. There should be some sort of a distance between the well and any structure built.
do you have an idea of the distance?
It varies depending on the type of well. For
Right.
example, if it's a gas well, then we need to have a larger distance, compared to an oil well, so that, and the H2S concentration. So all those factors needs to be put into place to do a risk assessment, and you do it. It varies anywhere from 5 meters to 15 meters, or could be 20 meters, depending on the type of well we have.
So if that well that was to qualify for the program, I mean, what if I find a well that somebody's, poured concrete in or done something that to try to plug it? And I mean, does it still qualify for, like, if someone's manipulated in any way? Am I concerned that I won't get funding from the program?
Nicole, you can take that one.
Yeah. Sorry, could you just repeat the last sentence of your question?
Well, am I still eligible for funding if the well that I do discover is somehow been, manipulated or damaged? Someone tried to plug it and it's, they've kind of tampered with it, I guess.
Yeah, so for the Abandoned Works program, one of the eligibility requirements is that the well has not been intentionally tampered with. So what we consider intentionally tampered is that a well, so a person has taken steps to do work on a well or hired someone to work on a well with the intention of using it or allowing its use. And so in order to do work on a well, the well must be licensed under the Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Act. So any person conducting work on a well must have the appropriate qualifications as outlined in the Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources of Ontario provincial operating standards. So we just want to make sure that if work is being done, it's being done by a qualified individual, just to ensure public safety. And so again, if you want to talk about eligibility to the Abandoned Works program, as we mentioned, the Abandoned Works program is for anybody that has a well where the active operator cannot be identified other than the landowner, and the landowner has not used, benefited from, or intentionally tampered. So if you just want to provide all the information that we talked about before, provide your contact information, the location of your well, give us some information about the sort of status of that well, we'd be happy to chat with you further about eligibility.
So another question in the chat is, can you provide a range of costs that have been experienced for plugging a gas well in that program?
Yeah, so I mean, there are several factors that might influence the cost of plugging a well, including the condition that the well might be in now, the access to the well, the depth of the well, the type of the well. So we've seen like quite a varied range due to the complexity of the well itself. So typical cost to plug a well, it might range from the tens of thousands to the hundreds of thousands based on like the complexity of it. So, and this is why, the Abandoned Works program exists. It provides financial
Pretty
assistance,
necessary, yeah.
Yeah, to the landowners to help with those eligible wells that are a high risk to public safety, the natural environment. So I think this program's been in existence since 2005, 2006. The ministry's spent roughly, I think it's close to 35 million to plug approximately, I think it's somebody else can correct me, but I think it's 450 wells, or is it 550 wells?
450, I think you said, yeah.
450, okay.
So, well, on that then, I've got a question from someone asking about that database and the map. With all work going on, are there changes and updates to the map? Should we check back? Does it get updated frequently, you know?
Yeah. And maybe after this question, we can take the opportunity to actually look at the map, just so people can get a sense as to what it looks like. So I'll ask my colleague Karen to kind of put that up on the screen. But so the well map database gets updated as information comes in. So the ministry actually worked with the Oil, Gas, and Salt Resources Library. The library was donated like thousands of records from industry, and we're able to cross-reference what existed in the database based on the records that we received. And I think you know, because of that, hundreds of additional well records were able to be added to the database. So the ministry is always looking, and the library are always looking for, you know, additional information about, you know, wells that might exist, well records, trying to get our hands on, you know, what industry has in, you know, boxes in their basement. So we can do the work and try to make the provincial database as accurate as possible. So yeah, if somebody from the public comes to us and says we've got a well, it's not in the database, then we can, you know, do some research, and things get added kind of all the time. I believe the database gets updated actually every Thursday. So the information that you find in the database is very accurate. Again, I just want to put out there that these are, you know, what's in the database is what we have a record for. So there might be wells that exist out there that we don't have a record for. And for us to be able to build the database and make it as accurate as possible, it's really great if people can share if they have anything. But again, that's why we say, just because there's no record doesn't mean there might not be something on your property. So if you do see something when you're walking your property, or you're out there harvesting or planting, and you just see something, you know, keep in mind that it might be, if it looks something like old infrastructure, keep in mind it might be an old oil and gas well, and feel free to contact the ministry, and we'll chat about it.
Thank you.
So Karen has put up a postcard that we made, that we're going to provide to Ian and Joanne following this session. So it's a PDF on how to search for a well record. It's 2 pages long. So it provides the steps on how to use the database, and then the back of it provides the type of information that you might be looking for, you might be seeing most commonly in a well record. So it doesn't accommodate for everything that you may find in a well record. It doesn't accommodate for every well type or every well mode, but it does kind of give some information about the most common ones. And then we do have the information for the library there, and they can help you further kind of decipher what your well record might say.
And just so you know, on the OFA website, after this is over, all this will be uploaded. And so if you go to ofa.on.ca, our website, on the top bar, there's a menu, resources, a drop down that says webinars, and that's where the recording of this webinar and all the material that goes with it will be.
Okay, so this is the petroleum well map from GeoHub. So all of those blue dots represent a well. So if you want to see if there's one on your property, you could just go up to the top right corner, put in an address, put it in the address of a M&R building in Elmer. So this shows you my location, but there's no wells there. But let's see around here.
Wow.
So there are some around Elmer. So then if you just click on a dot, it'll pull up this table of information. So you can see who the operator is or was, the license number, the well type. This one's an oil and gas show. The mode is, it's abandoned. So we shouldn't be able to see anything at surface for this one. They're that long, and some other info about the well, like when it was drilled, what date, So that's how you can find out more about the well, and then some of these terms will match. You'll see that on the back of that postcard, the legend. And then, so yeah, the basic, this is good for searching your address and looking for wells, but then if you wanted to, you can go further and filter out if you wanted to look into location or a well type or anything like that, then you're able to do that there as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Karen.
No problem.
Nicole,
Mhm.
you mentioned that the government has spent, I think you said $35 or $30 million so far on this program. I'm trying to recall. I think recently there was a submission to the environmental registry, maybe last year, about ensuring that drillers or well companies, I think whether they have money in trust or that you've kind of made it more fulsome in the amount of money they have to have in place to ensure that when a well is abandoned, that it's properly plugged now. Am I right about that? It just seems like a lot of money that we're spending because companies, generations ago just abandoned something.
Hmm. So the decommissioning of wells, of
Right.
petroleum wells, it's the responsibility of the license holder or leasee. So, current operating wells now, they, according to our legislation, they need to be decommissioned according to the guidelines. So in terms of well plugging, that needs to be done by a plugging contractor. They're going to plug it with cement to ensure that it meets the needs of our guidelines. In terms of, sorry, the second half of your question.
Well, I think the regulation kind of said that, company, it's to protect against bankruptcies or ensure that there's enough money for a series of wells somebody may have. I recall it being, it just kind of improved that funding made or, required to be available to ensure that even in a case of a bankruptcy, I think that's a lot of the experience that people have in Southwest Ontario is that the company that, somebody dug a well or drilled a well and then it went through a few company changes and bankruptcies and then they're stuck with a well on their property. So I guess it's just a comment that it's part of what we need to do is ensure these companies do have the funding available to make sure this doesn't keep happening, right?
Yeah, so I would say when it comes to like current operators, there aren't the industry in Ontario is not very large. Like I said, there's about 3,400
Right.
operating wells. That number doesn't really increase much at that point. So a lot of our focus is put on the legacy wells that are on the landscape that might remain unplugged. But there is like a security that needs to be given forward. So I think that either Robert or Katie on the line here might be able to speak a little bit more to kind of active operations than I could. Oh, hi, Katie.
Hey, Nicole,
Great.
thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, so to the question about securities, we acknowledge it's the amount held in security is often not sufficient to cover the cost of plugging a well if it isn't addressed by the operator. So we do have inspections in place. We do provide education to operators and where needed compliance activity to ensure that currently operating wells meet requirements and are plugged as required if they're no longer active. A lot of the money being spent through the Legacy Wells work and through the Abandoned Works program is to address historic legacy wells, so wells that were put in place and left on the landscape even before regulations were in place. So a lot of that money that we're spending, it's to really address issues from the past. And we are we acknowledge the need for further review of the amount of security held, but some of the steps that we're taking now it would be through inspections to ensure that current companies are taking care of those wells and plugging as needed so that they don't become more of these legacy wells in the future.
I imagine, yeah, since, yeah, I guess you said 1858 or something was the start of oil industry in Ontario. So we're around
Right. So
175
yeah,
years. Yeah.
long before regulation for many of the
Right.
wells that we're spending the money to address now through these legacy programs.
So I guess for clarity, then I did have a question in the chat, and it's how long is a well operator responsible for the costs after well is closed, and is the landowner or anyone else sharing royalties responsible for the costs?
Nicole, do you want to jump back on questions, or
If you have an answer to this one,
I can.
that'd be great.
Robert, do you want to speak to that one?
Yeah. So the license holder, they're responsible for the
Right.
plugging of the well. If a license holder properly plugs a well, the well has been abandoned, then through OGRA, our legislation, the landowner can become the operator of the well as they own the land. But at that point, the well has been plugged, and today's standards, it should be holding. So, but into the future, the well could be the responsibility of a landowner. In specific circumstances, however, say that well in the future starts to leak and that individual has never benefited from that well, or they're experiencing a situation like that now, that's a type of scenario where our abandoned works program would fit and likely support that landowner.
So, but if that landowner has received royalties, then are they not eligible? Or possibly are they?
I can jump in on that one. So I think it's a bit of so typically the program is intended for people who have not directly benefited
Right.
from the well. It is a case-by-case review. So I would say if there's any question about potential AWP eligibility, certainly reach out to the petroleum operations section, and we could provide more information on the specific circumstances of any given well. But in general, it's more for those cases where wells are found on property, you haven't used or benefited from them, and we'll recover the cost through that program.
So a previous owner may have benefited from it, decades ago when I've taken over the property and
took over the property and knew nothing about it. But certainly there's some complexity, so happy to chat about any specific scenarios, and would definitely encourage you to reach out.
I do have one more question in the chat. We're doing pretty good for time. Are there measures in place for chief building officers, officials, planners to check before approving a site plan for new builds related to, wells? If it's not visible, how would someone know not to build there? That's the other part of it. I guess they wouldn't, right?
Yeah, so in terms of, chief building officials or planners, so where and how growth and development at the local level is mostly determined by the municipalities. So municipalities can add restrictions to their official plan or zoning bylaws to make it more responsive to whatever their local conditions might be. So for example, if there's an area that has a high density of legacy oil and gas wells, the ministry's action plan that we chatted about, it tries to take an approach that's cooperative across different types of government to identify risks and, to sort of like review our existing policy and design options that can sort of manage these risks. And that might include options related to land use planning or development programs. And I know we talk a lot with the different municipalities about their needs as it relates to oil and gas wells through the action plan. There's just a lot of engagement. There's lots of consultation. We have various forums that we engage with municipalities on oil and gas issues. And so we're working closely with them to figure out their needs. What they need from the ministry, what the ministry can offer in terms of technical advice to them as well. So there is a good relationship that's being continued there. In terms of like if you yourself want to build something on your property, again, just we want to say just avoid contemplating construction in an area where you think you have a well on your property. Just we just want to make sure that access to that well can be can be, seen into the future. And, we just don't want any public health or safety issues related to building to like near wells. So we just want to make sure everybody's safe, and feel free to contact the ministry if you have questions about like your specific example of, well location and where you might want to build something on your property.
So there's another question, and I guess it's about responsibility of individuals and municipal staff again. At what point should reports related to former oil wells be circulated to the ministry? And is it the responsibility of the owner applicant to do so, or should municipal staff be forwarding these reports once they receive them, understanding that the reports will be circulated during the agency circulation process?
I
Site
think,
assessments and local surveys, that kind of thing.
yeah, I would say I don't know. I don't know much as it relates to environmental site assessments or surveys. So if I see Katie popping on, so she might save me from this one. So Katie, can I turn it over to you?
Sure. I think I was going to touch on the same message as you. So we wouldn't necessarily be involved in any form of circulation with the municipality for development plans directly. So certainly they're the sort of the main contact for planning, and we are happy to provide any technical guidance to them that we can, also working on building that guidance so that they have more sort of standing guidelines for what to consider. I would say though, if you do have questions, whether it's a municipal partner or if it's a landowner, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to the petroleum operations section. We're happy to provide any guidance that we can, whether it's for a larger plan or for your specific property. We can't necessarily give you very specific details on where you can build and what you need to do, but we can certainly provide best practice guidelines on how much space should be left around a well to ensure that there is access for potential maintenance and any other information that we can share. And then I think I would point again to the publicly available database on well locations can also be a great tool for both landowners and municipal partners to sort of take a look at the start of the process and confirm which wells might be on those properties.
Yeah, and Katie just mentioned contacting the petroleum operations section. So that's the number that we've been providing, the 519-873-4634, or our email at gasandoilwells@ontario.ca.
I have to say that generally, I think a lot of farmers, or some farmers, may be kind of hesitant to have the government looking at their properties and things going on in their properties, but the information you provided, I think, can waylay people's concerns, and you've kind of shown that there's really no downside to. There is no downside to following up with this information with you folks and getting these things properly sealed and dealt with and mapped as well. So
yeah, I wanted to add too. There was another point I wanted to add on the well piece itself. So with certainly we can provide technical advice, but then we also should be advised of any updates that may be made to a well. For example, if there's a well that needs to be plugged prior to work, a license is required for that plugging. So certainly there are aspects where we need to be involved. And then there's the parts of it where we're able to just provide additional support and information. And then, yeah, again, just reiterating your point that we're here to help. What we really want to do at the end of the day is protect the health and safety of the landowner and everyone else involved and near that property. So we want to make sure that you all have the information that you need to ensure that the well isn't posing a hazard to yourselves, your families. So yeah, certainly would not hesitate to reach out to us at any time if you have questions.
And as you said, to ensure that a licensed individual has done this so it's properly plugged.
Yeah. So if you do need to, as a result of your assessments, need to plug a well or do any other work on it, a license is needed from the ministry. That would be the petroleum operations section. And actually for the contractors to be able to do work on the well, they'll want to know that you have a license for that. So
for sure.
Certainly if there's actually anything happening to the well, we need to know from that standpoint, and we can provide additional guidance as much as possible as well.
Well, I would just like to thank you and all of your staff that joined us today. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Joanne, how do you close it up, please?
Yeah, thanks for joining. And again, as I said, this it has been recorded, so it will be on our ofa.on.ca website. Again, resources, a drop-down menu will come down, hit webinars, and all the lunch and learns are there as well as all the information, other information that has been shared.
And that's
So
available to all, not just members,
yeah,
any of the public.
anyone can view these for sure. So thank you very much for joining, and yeah, thank you to you, Nicole, and everyone else that helped out. We're happy to have you.
Thanks. Take care. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.